In April 2003, a 27-year-old engineer went for a hike in a remote Utah canyon. What should have been a normal Saturday adventure turned into 6 days of hell. Trapped alone with no way to call for help, he faced an impossible choice. And what he did to survive is something most of us can't even imagine. This is the true story of Aron Ralston and the 127 hours that changed everything. Aron Ralston wasn't some rookie. By 2003, he was an experienced mountaineer living in Aspen, Colorado. He worked as a mechanical engineer for a company called Par Avion Technology, but his real passion was the outdoors. He'd already climbed dozens of Colorado's highest peaks, many of them solo during winter. He knew what he was doing out there. On Friday, April 25th, Aron decided to take a weekend trip to southeast Utah. His plan was to explore Bluejohn Canyon, a narrow slot canyon in a remote part of Canyonlands National Park. He'd been there before. For someone with his experience, this was a pretty standard adventure. Here's the thing about Aron's style. He liked going solo. No partners, no crowds, just him and the wilderness. It gave him freedom and peace. That Saturday morning, he parked his truck at the trailhead, grabbed his gear, and headed into the canyon system. He had a climbing rope, a headlamp, a cheap knife tool, a video camera, and a hydration system with about 22 ounces of water. Not a lot, but he wasn't planning to be gone long. He didn't tell anyone exactly where he was going. Not his roommates, not his family, nobody. It wasn't unusual for him. He'd done trips like this dozens of times before. The hike into Bluejohn Canyon was beautiful. The sandstone walls glowed orange and red. The air was cool and clean. Everything was going exactly as planned. Around midday on Saturday, April 26th, Aron was making his way through a section of the canyon about 3 feet wide. He came across a boulder wedged between the walls, suspended above the canyon floor. These kinds of rocks are called chalkstones, and they're common in slot canyons. Climbers deal with them all the time. Aron climbed on top of the boulder to get over it. Standard procedure, but as he moved across it, the 800-pound rock shifted under his weight. It wasn't stable. In an instant, the boulder dropped, and Aron went down with it. His right hand slammed against the canyon wall. The boulder crushed it, pinning his entire right arm from the hand to just below the elbow. He was stuck, completely stuck. At first, he tried to stay calm. He pulled as hard as he could. The boulder didn't move. He tried to chip away at the rock with his cheap multi-tool knife. Barely made a scratch. The sandstone wall behind his arm was softer, so he tried chipping at that instead. Hours of work, and he barely made a dent. The sun was going down. He realized something terrifying. He wasn't getting out of this on his own, and nobody knew where he was. That first night was brutal. Aron was standing upright, unable to sit or lie down. The temperature in the canyon dropped into the 40s. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. All he could do was stand there, his arm completely numb, trying not to panic. By Sunday morning, he started taking inventory. He had less than a liter of water total, 2 burritos, a few pieces of candy, a small video camera. That was it. No cell phone service. The canyon walls were too high and thick. No one was coming. He knew that for sure, because no one knew where to look. He tried everything he could think of. He rigged up a pulley system with his climbing rope and anchor trying to lift the boulder. It didn't budge. He kept chipping away at the rock and the wall, tiny bits of progress, but nowhere near enough. Every hour that passed, he got weaker. By day 3, his water was almost gone. He started rationing it down to tiny sips. When that ran out, he had no choice. He drank his own urine to stay alive. It bought him time, but not much. The pain in his arm had mostly disappeared, replaced by a sick numbness. His trapped hand was turning darker, dying from lack of blood flow. His body was shutting down from dehydration. He was running out of time, and he knew it. Let's talk about the mistakes, because this is where things matter. Aron made one critical error that almost cost him his life. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Not a note, not a voicemail, nothing. That meant when he didn't show up for work on Monday, no one had any idea where to even start looking. His roommates knew he went to Utah. That's it. Utah is a massive state with thousands of canyons. Search and rescue teams had no starting point. Even if someone had reported him missing right away, finding him would have been nearly impossible. By Tuesday, Aron knew he was dying. He used his video camera to record goodbye messages to his family. He carved his name into the canyon wall with his knife, along with what he thought would be his date of death. He was preparing to die alone in that canyon. But then something in him refused to give up. He thought about the people he loved. He thought about everything he still wanted to do. And he started thinking about the one option he'd been avoiding. The only way out was amputation. He had to cut off his own arm. The problem was his multi-tool knife was dull, really dull. He'd already been using it for days trying to chip rock. He tried to cut through his arm on Wednesday, but the knife couldn't get through the bone. He couldn't do it. That's when he thought he was finished. Thursday morning arrived. April 30th, day 5. Aron had been trapped for nearly 127 hours. He was severely dehydrated, hallucinating, barely conscious. And then something shifted. He later described having a vision of a small boy, a future son, being picked up by a one-armed man. Whether it was a dream, a hallucination, or something else, it changed everything. He decided right then that he was getting out, no matter what it took. That's when he realized something. He didn't need to cut through the bone. He could break it first. By using the boulder as leverage, he could snap the bones in his forearm, then cut through the soft tissue. It would work. It had to work. Aron placed his arm in position and threw his body weight against it. The bones snapped. Both the radius and ulna fractured. The pain was incredible, but he didn't stop. He grabbed his dull knife and started cutting. It took him about an hour. He cut through skin, muscle, tendons, and nerves. He used a tourniquet made from the tube of his hydration system to control the bleeding. Finally, his arm came free. After 127 hours, he was no longer trapped. But he wasn't safe yet, not even close. Aron still had to get out of the canyon. He was missing an arm, losing blood, completely dehydrated, and miles from help. He wrapped the stump of his arm as best as he could and started moving. First, he had to rappel down a 65-foot rock face using only one arm. Somehow, he did it. Then he started hiking toward the canyon entrance. Every step took everything he had left. He'd been walking for hours when he ran into a family of 3 Dutch hikers, Eric and Monique Meyer, and their son, Andy. They were shocked. Here was a man covered in blood, missing an arm, barely able to stand. They immediately gave him water and snacks and radioed for help. A rescue helicopter was dispatched. By the time they reached Aron, he'd lost about 25% of his blood volume and was in critical condition. They flew him to a hospital in Moab, then transferred him to Grand Junction, Colorado for surgery. He survived. Against every possible odd, Aron Ralston survived. A few days later, search and rescue teams went back into Bluejohn Canyon with heavy equipment. They recovered his severed arm, still pinned under that boulder. They had to use a winch and multiple people to move the rock. It weighed over 800 pounds. There was never any chance he was going to lift it on his own. Aron spent 127 hours trapped in that canyon. 6 days. Most people wouldn't have lasted half that long. His story became international news. He wrote a book about it called Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which later became the movie 127 Hours. But here's what matters for anyone watching this. Aron's survival came down to a few critical factors, and there are real lessons here. First, always tell someone where you're going. Exact locations, expected return time, backup plans. If Aron had done this, a search would have started within 24 hours. It could have saved him days of suffering. Second, bring proper communication devices. A satellite messenger or personal locator beacon could have changed everything. These devices work even in remote canyons where cell phones don't. Third, never underestimate a routine trip. Aron had done dozens of solo canyon trips. He was experienced and confident, but all it took was one unstable boulder to put him in a life-or-death situation. Experience doesn't make you immune to accidents. Fourth, the will to survive is real. Aron's mental strength kept him alive when his body was shutting down. He made the hardest decision imaginable, because giving up wasn't an option. And finally, know when extreme action is the only option. Aron waited days before amputating, trying every other possibility first. But once he accepted what had to be done, he did it. That decision saved his life. Today, Aron is still an adventurer. He climbs mountains, hikes canyons, and lives a full life with a prosthetic arm. He got married and had children, including that son from his vision. He speaks publicly about his experience and the lessons he learned. His story isn't about being reckless. It's about the price of isolation, the power of the human will, and the importance of preparation. One decision, one mistake, one moment can change everything. And sometimes, survival means doing the unthinkable. Aron's story reminds us that survival isn't just about physical strength. It's about preparation, mental resilience, and making the right choices before you ever face danger. If you found this story as gripping as I did, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We cover real survival stories like this every week. Stories that teach us lessons we hope we never have to use. Drop a comment below and let me know what survival story you want to hear next. Thanks for watching, and remember, always tell someone where you're going.